Hey there, this is episode 51 of Mini-Pod. No fluff, just good stuff in under 5 minutes. I always promise you that. This is me, Dave Jacobs of Small Church Pastor. Gosh, it must have been years ago, but I can still remember when I spoke with a representative of this group called Compassion International. Now, the staffer who interviewed me was also working on her master's degree, and her thesis was on how organizations overcome obstacles. Her name was Kristen, and she shared with me how CI had done pretty well in reaching out to and working with larger churches, but have recently admitted that they haven't done so well with small churches. And she wanted my help in understanding better the ethos of small churches. And I asked Kristen, I said, now, what do you mean by a small church? And she said, 250 or less. Now, I told her that wasn't a bad definition as long as she realized that more than half of all churches under 250 would be fewer than 100. And I explained that a church of 50 is significantly different than a church of 250. And if you think about it, a church of 100 can be different than a church of 250. Because of this, I shared that CI's desire to understand the culture of a small church, it's going to be pretty difficult. There are different subsets, you see, of 250. I would identify these as 0 to 50 is one, 50 to 100 is another, 100 to 175, and 175 then to 250. Now, what range of small church does your church fall under? Is it 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 175, or 175 to 250? My experience in working with pastors of small churches is that many will never break the 50 barrier, or the 100 barrier, or the 175 barrier, or the 250 barrier. But wait a minute. Where does it say that there's a barrier that we've got to break through? Well, I'll tell you, the church growth movement of the 80s and 90s told us that there was a 200 barrier to break through. Then they told us there was a 500 barrier to break through, and on and on and on. Now, I'm not convinced that there is such a barrier to break through. Now, having said that, I'm not suggesting that we quit trying to reach new people with the good news of Jesus, but that we learn to be content without becoming complacent. I think, and hear me now, that the biggest barrier small churches need to break through is the barrier of self-doubt. We can be small and think small. We can focus on what we can't do rather than what we can do. We can listen to our church culture that tells us because we're small that there's something wrong with us, that we're broken, we need to be fixed. And we can be made to feel invisible and insignificant and pathetic. But these are all lies. Each subcategory of 250 has its own unique beauty and challenges and its own strengths and weaknesses. What if we're more concerned about breaking growth barriers than God is? I mean, think about it for a moment. What if God is more concerned about having the healthiest church possible, regardless of its size? Once again, a healthy church will want to reach new people, but that's a focus all churches are having a hard time with, even if they're above 250. And don't let anyone ever tell you differently. Kristen called the small church an untapped resource, and I agree. Break through your barriers of self-doubt. I'm just here to tell you, you're okay. This is me, Dave Jacobs of Small Church Pastor. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit that thumbs up button if you liked it, and tell a friend about the Small Church Pastor podcast, better known as Mini-Pod with me. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.